Welcome to Conversations with the Smith Family. I'm Doug Taylor, the CEO of the Smith Family, and in this series we're exploring the big issues affecting young people, their education and their future, and how we can break down the barriers to help all young people thrive at school and beyond. And today I'm really pleased to be speaking with distinguished Professor George Williams AO. George is the Vice-Chancellor and President of Western Sydney University. He's got decades of experience as a scholar, as a teacher and a senior leader in the higher education sector. As well as that, George is also a barrister and one of Australia's leading experts in constitutional law. So he makes a big contribution to the Australian community. And today we'll be talking about why too many young people are being held back by their experience of poverty and not being able to make the most of their university education. We'll also be talking about the importance of humanities, the role of AI and the role of leaders in engaging with social media and particularly TikTok. So it's a broad conversation today. As well as my leadership role here at the Smith Family, I'm also on the Western Sydney University Board of Trustees. The Smith Family works with universities right across Australia. And I've particularly seen George firsthand in his deep commitment to equity and real focus on student outcomes. And I also know that George is a donor of the Smith Family for the last 33 years. George, thank you again for joining us. Really looking forward to our conversation. Now, we as individuals and in representing our organisations have a shared passion and interest in education. I'm wondering if you could share with us a really memorable education moment for you. Could have been in your early years as a student or as an educator. Tell us what comes to mind.
Many of my most memorable moments were as a kid. In fact, I would have been a Smith family kid. If you talk about my background, single parent background, often wasn't enough food on the table, really struggled with school. And I was a kid that you'd have to say the other teachers didn't want in their classroom. I wasn't very well behaved. And I think a lot of that was I was in really unsettled circumstances and struggled as a result. And I do remember as a kid, a really memorable moment for me, a teacher saying when I was about 9, she said, George, you're going to have a permanent detention every Thursday. I'm going to keep you back. And I thought, that's a bit unfair. I haven't actually done anything yet, a permanent detention. And this was on the back, I must admit, of facing expulsion a few times in primary school. Wow. And it turned out that when I had this detention with the teacher, that she basically spent an hour educating me every Thursday lunchtime. Wow. So she saw something in me, and that was a real turning point in my life. I felt self-esteem. I actually started to enjoy learning for the first time. And that experience and that dedication from that teacher, that one-on-one teaching, just changed my self-perception. So for me, that's the power of education, and it's why I have such a high regard for teachers. They change lives, and it's why I'm in the business I am, higher education. I want every student to have the same chance I did.
Yeah, that's a powerful story. And so often we hear when we ask this question to our guests that it's the in-classroom experiences, but it's often the kind of out-of-classroom experiences where...
Well, in my case, it was the detention experience.
There
you go, Doug. That might be a first for you.
I have to confess, George, that is a first. So you've broken new ground. I was being generous in calling it an out-of-classroom experience.
I call a spade a spade. I was a badly behaved kid. A teacher got me on an entirely different track, I tell you what.
And, as an educator yourself and working in the university, you just see teachers and lecturers, tutors going above and beyond so often. And it's that really does make such an extraordinary difference. And, to think about where you've taken your education is just quite remarkable from where you've started. George, as well as potentially being a Smith family kid, you've talked about the fact that you're a current donor and supporter for, I think you said 33 years. And thank you. We appreciate that. That's just wonderful. I'm no doubt that comes from your insights over many years about the relationship between people's experience of poverty and their inability to make the most of this fantastic opportunity with a great education. Can you tell us a bit about what you see on the ground at Western Sydney University and those big macro factors of housing costs, income support, and the types of support that the students need and what that means for their education?
Yeah, and I would say, Doug, I'm really proud to be a donor. And let me say it comes from my mum, because even when we didn't have much money, she always donated. And that really sent a lesson to me. And as we know, it's often people who don't have a lot of money who are the most generous. That for me was a powerful example about giving back. So I credit my mum for that one.
Yeah, wonderful.
And in terms of what we're doing at Western Sydney Uni, we see the same problems the Smith family is directed to. And in my case, I've been in the job for nearly 18 months. I'm dealing with the fact that a lot of our students have got food insecurities. About 1 in 2 either suffer from they can't afford all the meals during the week, or it can be they just can't get good nutrition. They can afford the meals, but they're just low grade and not enough. And we really deal with that issue of students coming to class hungry. Not just that, digital devices is a big issue for us as well. About 30-40% of our students only have a mobile phone, no internet at home, no computer. And so, of course, you can imagine, I spoke to one student who was saying they're writing a 3,000-word essay on their mobile phone. Very tough to manage that. And if you add the food, the phone, housing, I'm really sad to say we live in a rich country where many students today live in poverty while they study. And it really disturbs me because, I really believe in a fair go. Education is the great opportunity. Everyone should have a chance through hard work, education, and mobility in a great life. And so as a leader at the uni, I'm really committed to saying, well, we need to have a great classroom experience, but how do we support them in their lives? And that means food pantries, device programs and the like. There's no point saying the classroom's great, but they just can't get through for economic reasons.
Yeah.
So we're in the food, device and education business as much as we are just about education.
Yeah. And, George, that just resonates so much with our work. But then as I talk to educators in the public education system, they will say the same thing. Increasingly, they're providing those additional wraparound supports, often to address those practical things, but increasingly things related to mental health and well-being. We know that if those things are unaddressed, that is a big driver of a young person disengaging from their education. So it really is just that kind of wraparound integrated level of supports. George, and you've written about this so powerfully in your Australia Institute essay, and thank you for that terrific contribution to the public conversation about the future of tertiary education. It really brings us back to the kind of the social license of universities when you talk about education as the ladder of opportunity. George, so what do you think needs to change? I mean, there's big macro issues which you talk about, but particularly thinking about in a university context, what do you think needs to change in order to address some of these challenges that we're talking about?
And I think, Doug, the first part is just we need to understand and acknowledge the problem. We don't talk enough about the struggles of young people through education in university. At my end, I'm trying to highlight the reality of student life. And it's a two-track system. If you've got the bank of mum and dad, uni's great. It's not a problem, but a lot of people don't. And it's pretty tough in Sydney. Youth allowance is $47 a day. Median rent's over $100 a day. How are you meant to survive if your parents can't support you? And when I talk to people, it cuts through pretty quickly. They just say that's unfair, that we should live in a society where, irrespective of your background, you've got the ability to study. So I think the starting point is just opening people's eyes. We do have a problem in this country. I think from there's a number of key policy settings, better income support for students in tertiary education. $47 a day is not enough. It's just impossible for those students. I met one student recently at our Campbelltown community dinner. They're living in their car while they study paramedicine. Is that the sort of society? Well, no, and the odds of them getting through are not high over 3 years. The other one would be just fees, where we've absolutely increased the debt and fees for students. So over the past couple of decades, inflation's gone up 62%, student fees have gone up 145%. So we're loading this generation up with increasing amounts of debt. And then they get through, they find it hard to pay off the debt, they can't get a housing loan, particularly arts degrees. It's now over $50,000 for 3 years. That is the degree of choice for brilliant students from low SES, Indigenous. A lot of women choose that as well. And we're pricing them out. So I think, Doug, the short answer is let's design the system around students, focus on their needs, give them a fair go, as opposed to essentially a system that really prioritises, you've got investments, wealth, you tend to do pretty well. Let's actually have a system that says young people work hard, and actually the social contract means we'll get you through and you've got a great life. It actually fails many of them at the moment. You're
right to draw out that social contract. It's something that has been foundational to a functioning good society and democracy. We've got that kind of trust in institutions and doing the work, being a citizen active and making a contribution through education and employment and other means.
And I would say on that, Doug, you break that at your peril. And this is where if you care about social cohesion, you look after young people. And what we're seeing, I mean, there's the Scanlon poll recently, which found that only 31% of young people felt a sense of belonging to our country. So you actually had there, 69% feel alienated. I mean, what's that going to mean? And I'd actually say that the biggest problems are often in young men at the moment. Their tertiary figures are very low compared to women. And we've got a group of young men who 10 to 15 years will be unable to get the best jobs, the best incomes, will feel let down, bitter. And what sort of society are we going to have? I think there's trouble.
Yeah.
Not just for them, but for the community we live in.
Yeah, and globally, I've certainly read a lot and observed, in the region, the kind of the promise of an education leading to jobs, and in some countries that being problematic. And I think the International Labour Organization talks about kind of potential for a scarring and forgotten generation with that kind of compact frame. So George, obviously, rightly calling out those big kind of important macro policies, income support, housing, as being really necessary and so related to educational outcomes. In terms of within the responsibilities of the university and what universities can control, proudly as an alum of Western Sydney Uni, I look at what I think is 67% being first in family.
Yeah, 2/3, that's right.
Yeah, I was first in family as well. I think Western Sydney's got great insights about good practice of really engaging all students. So within the confines of what universities should be doing, what do you think that looks like?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, Doug. I mean, one is we have choices about how we use our resources. And for me, we use our resources and direct them to our mission. Starts with students, first and foremost. And for me, I'm always asking, is this hard-fought dollar actually going to deliver an outcome for our students? And it means holistically. So again, it's using resources for food, for things like that keep students in study. That's sort of not what people expect of unis, but I think we've got to support our students and have a holistic view of what helps them get from A to B. And B is graduation, great job, great life. And it means also making tough choices at our end. We've had a really challenging year financially, but saying, well, in that tough environment, again, what does students first mean? And maybe stopping some things that are nice to have but don't deliver enough. We've also got to focus really on the classroom experience. At our level, we've got to ask, well, what does teaching mean in this new world? We've got to grapple with AI. That's a big challenge for us at the moment. And recognise a new generation, entirely different relationships with technology, AI and the like. And bottom line is we've got to set our students up for success, jobs, great life opportunities. So that again is hard. We've got to change a lot as a university to make sure that we set people up for this new world. And I'd also say, Doug, quite apart from all of this, how we direct our resources, our people, our energy, the other bit is we've just got to be up for the fight as a university. I think as an organisation, you're often defined by who you fight for, what you fight for. And I'm really determined at Western Sydney Uni, we fight for students. And we've got to be out there loud and bold in calling out where the system is broken and saying on behalf of our students, this is what we think is needed. Listening to their voices, this is what's needed for the fair go.
I know that on commencing at Western Sydney University, you called your first year the year of the student. I was at a forum the other day, said, you know what, next year is going to be the year of the student as well.
Yeah, giving it away there, Doug. That's right. But yeah, this year is the year of the student, but every year will be. I haven't told my staff yet, though, but we'll announce it here and now.
Yeah, but so powerful. And I've heard you speak really powerfully too about just the importance of supporting young people through to completion. We don't want to saddle young people with debt and degrees they haven't been able to complete if it's within their powers to do so. That in itself was kind of a forcing function for doing the right things so that we set people up for the young people up for the future in a very different sort of economy that's emerging. And just building on that, and you referenced AI, George, we're very involved in careers education at the Smith family and really looking at good evidence-based practice in schools that need it most. We're concerned about the fact that careers resources are not at the schools that need it, and the quality sometimes isn't as it's required. In thinking about that, and I know your university, other universities are proactively engaging with schools, which is great. How do you think about engaging young people and thinking about their futures with AI? What sort of advice are you providing, really, to young people now to think about their futures?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm actually really excited. I think this is a game changer in it. And look, AI can be used for good or evil, and we're going to use it for good. We're going to use this technology to support our students. And there's some big advantages here. And I'd say one of the biggest, Doug, is particularly students from equity backgrounds or with special needs. We find it really difficult to cater to special needs. We teach big lectures. We've got 50,000 students. But if you've got a technology that allows tailoring down to the individual level, for example, AI-based tutors that will assist a student overcome numeracy issues or literacy issues, we don't have the resources for that. But we're actually looking at agentic tutors and other things that will actually, respond to particular student needs. And even within a classroom to say, here's your difficulty with this area. Well, here's actually a system that can be alongside of you. And the technology is there to do it. So I'm actually hoping that this will let us really target student need very specifically in a way that will improve learning, improve retention. And the other bit for us is that I think big opportunities for young people if they've got this technology and they understand it. And we're looking at introducing an AI bootcamp for all of our students beginning next February. So they've got basic skills, they can talk to employers, understand ethical and correct uses of AI, and just unleash the technology for their careers. So I think if you do these things and you approach it within a lens of public good, it's amazing for what it will do for disadvantaged people in our community and enabling us to deliver a stronger and better education.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, isn't it? And certainly we're aligned in terms of thinking about the foundation to this being equity. Can't go past the need for connectivity to make the most of AI, and you're working on that. We're working on that at the Smith family. We're also doing some really interesting AI avatar-based tutoring trials at the moment because we know how much catch-up learning is important. It's fascinating. Building on that, George, and thinking then about, yes, the technical as it relates to AI, but then the critical thinking dimensions. You mentioned the importance of humanities, and there's some, perverse incentives at the moment around humanities. But tell us a bit about how you think about the critical thinking skills for this as well.
I think the short answer, I think as a nation, we got it wrong. At the moment, we charge over $50,000 for a humble arts degree. Has the lowest earning potential. We're saying as a nation, don't do arts, don't do the humanities. And that was a Morrison government policy from 2021, whereas maths isn't $50,000, it's $14,000. So they're deliberately trying to shift people to other areas, often more vocationally narrow areas. And look, I don't think that ever made sense. And it's certainly what it does is just price people out of a uni degree, particularly people from poorer backgrounds. But it's absolutely wrong-headed because in the world of AI, we need to move away from narrow vocational training to actually opening people's minds with philosophy, history. In a world of misinformation, critical thinking, it's the key skill. And even big companies like Microsoft are saying, sure, we need AI skills, but we need people with people skills who can understand the societal impacts of AI. So for me, the ticket for the great jobs is actually a breadth of education, ready for jobs that frankly don't even exist yet, but you've got adaptability, resilience, critical thinking. And I think, technical skills plus humanities, that's a really strong pathway. But as a nation, we're telling people don't pursue that at the moment. And that just needs to change.
Music to my ears as an arts graduate of Western Sydney University.
Well, it shows you where it can take you, Doug. You can run the Smith family one day.
Absolutely. But, just the things I learned through that degree are so helpful in so many areas of life and work. So very supportive of that. And it's a great insights in terms of thinking about how preeminent they are in terms of, obviously, with AI giving us an abundance of answers. Knowing the right questions is so very important in this age and going forward. Now, going from a wonderful philosophical conversation about AI, critical thinking, we want to talk about TikTok now with you, George. Now, the first Vice-Chancellor, I believe, that's really engaged with TikTok in a significant way. And I understand, and actually I've seen online the headstand that you did for a bit. It was very impressive, I might say. Look it up, please.
Embarrassing, but yes.
Well, I was super impressed. I could not do that. 10,000 likes, amazing. Talk to us about your purpose in doing that. What's the driver for you in engaging in that way?
I think the core purpose is I just feel strongly I've got to be able to connect with my students. I don't feel I can advocate for them or understand their needs without listening to them. And when I came in, I tried very hard, particularly through other technologies like Zoom, set up a Zoom webinar for our 50,000 students. 25 turned up. Not many. And I tell you what, they probably deserve a gold medal for coming to a Zoom webinar with the Vice-Chancellor. I went back and talked to some students in our social media team, and they just said, you've got to go to where the students are. TikTok, Instagram. So we set up a similar thing there, and we got over 1,000 turning up, and really powerful, really raw, a lot about food, housing, cost. So we do that regularly every quarter. And separately, do a lot of content and the like, and it's effective. It says, I suppose, firstly it connects me, but also sends a strong message. The medium is the message in a way. It says to my students, I'm utterly out of my comfort zone. I'm really embarrassed. I find this really difficult, but if I'm prepared to do it, well, I want to connect, and I'm going to their space, not my space, and it sends a signal about, me traveling to them and coming to listen, and it provides an openness and a willingness on their part to engage. It also means, Doug, I often travel around our campuses, and I do get the students who come up and say, you're that guy from TikTok. They often then say, what do you do here? That's pretty common. I say I'm a Vice-Chancellor, and one student said, oh, is that like a Star Wars thing, Chancellor? I said, no, that's Jennifer Westacott. She's our Chancellor. But it just leads to a conversation, and then we have a bit of a chat. What are their issues? How's it going? Yeah. So it opens doors in ways that, as a senior manager, is pretty tough otherwise. It humanises, and it means you've got to be up for the occasional stunt or the like, because I often want to talk about that. Yeah. They think it's silly.
I mean, clearly it's a platform where you just can directly get engagement and feedback, and, running a large institution as you do, that's often the hardest thing. Running institutions, there's a lot of work internally, and cutting through that and hearing the voice of the student.
Well, I think as a leader, Doug, that's a lot of the key. So I'd have to say my most impactful times as a leader are in those sort of scenarios, out of my comfort zone. Yeah. I'm back in the classroom as well, so I'm teaching. That's really good to hear that I'm seeing our systems. I spend good time at our food pantry, dinner, so you talk to the students. Or the other one is actually spending time in our student services hubs where they come to queries. Yeah. And to be frank, I've learned how broken a lot of our systems are and the barriers we put in the way of students. But you've got to see that firsthand. Yeah. At a distance, you don't really understand viscerally, I think, how tough it can be to be a student today.
Absolutely, yeah. And look, my best days are when I'm in a school talking to students or talking to families, engaging.
Or on a podcast like this. There you go.
Yeah, okay. Second best day. Or even sitting with our call centre, hearing donors call them to make contributions. Right. And all that just is grounding, and it's a wonderful forcing function for what actually matters in our work. So, and now look, building on that with a kind of a final question. We've talked a lot about the challenges, and you've powerfully described them, which is a really significant contribution to the public conversation about tertiary education, given the amount of reforms that are in question and at stake as well. Just in thinking about the future, what are the kind of sources of hope and optimism for you in thinking about where this will all go for Australia?
And I think actually my primary source is just young people are amazing. Yeah. We have such a strong generation coming through, and despite what I described, their resilience, passion, commitment, I just feel so positive about the future of this country and the world based upon the young people I engage with. Yeah. If anything, it's, well, how do we liberate that talent, that commitment? How do we give them that opportunity? I think also at the higher education sector, I'm very positive about the government's Accord document. Yeah. It sets out a blueprint for higher education. It does say we should change the fees. It does say we should get to 80% tertiary attainment, which means that a lot of equity students get a chance. So for me, I think the blueprint is right. I've just got a sense of urgency there, and I think particularly on fees and some other things, no one should miss out. So I'd like it fixed yesterday, but I think my job is, just keep this going, push, and get the right outcomes for students.
Yeah, fantastic. And you're right. I mean, having that light on the hill in terms of equity, cohorts, participating in that really ambitious and necessary participation rate if we want the kind of knowledge economy that we need for the future. And look, it's been wonderful today, George, to hear about your leadership and about your experiences, and brings to life the really significant experiences of so many students. So look, thank you for your leadership, and we acknowledged tertiary leaders across Australia and the wonderful significant contribution that they make to the Australian community. And thanks for listening in today. If you'd like to listen to other conversations where we talk to leaders like George about the impact that they're having, please jump onto the smithfamily.com.au. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Doug.